Perhaps you're looking to buy your first bushcraft knife. Maybe you're looking to upgrade your existing knife. Or perhaps you're trying to strike that happy balance between lower end cost but higher end build. If any of those apply to you, I think I've got something in this video you're going to be interested in. Hi folks, I'm Craig Taylor, and as always a huge thanks for joining me here on my YouTube channel, the Bushcraft Padawan. Something a little different in this video insofar that I'm going to do a gear review. I don't do many gear reviews, and when I do a gear review, I don't just rush into them. I don't do unboxing type videos or first day out in the woods giving a review or anything like that. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Mora Garberg Carbon, and I'm reviewing it after 13 to 14 months of usage. So it's seen some action. One thing I want to go into from the outset, I'm not going to go into the laborious details of the technical aspects of this knife, the thickness of the steel, the tempering of the steel, the angle of the grind, all of that stuff. I know a lot of people are into that, and I know for a lot of people, myself included, it is important. What I'm going to do is below this video in the YouTube description, I'm going to link through to Mora's own site where you can knock yourself out with the technical details. Really high level stuff though for those people that have never heard about this knife before. It is the Mora Garberg carbon steel full tang knife. That probably says about enough of it as I'm comfortable with recollecting from the top of my head. Another reason why I'm going to send you to Mora Knives site as well. There's a lot of technical details. I'm not going to profess to know them intimately. Go and check that site out. Let's rewind the clock just a fraction. When I first got into this bushcrafting game, I bought what many people buy, which is the Mora Knife Companion. I used this for months on end and was very comfortable with it. I felt I was very confident with it. But like many people, I suppose we like to upgrade our kit and increase our kit, thinking that it's going to bring a whole new load of skill sets with it. And I purchased a knife from a well-known bushcraft retailer. I'm not going to go into the details. I had that knife for about a year and I was really unhappy with it. It just never kept an edge. I could not get it to keep an edge. I had some people who really know their stuff around bushcraft knives and sharpening look at it, sharpen it for me, and they just didn't give a great opinion of the knife. Again, I'm not going to go into the detail. I'm not going to name and shame anything like that. I went back to the organisation in question and said, look, can I send this knife in for testing? I'm not really happy with it. They said yes, to their credit. They looked at it, they tested it, they said that they thought it was okay, but they wanted me to be happy. What could they do? And it was just at the point where said Mora Garberg was about to be released. So they very kindly sent me one of these in replacement. I was a few pounds out of pocket, but I'd been using their knife for a year, so I felt that was more than acceptable. So that's the backstory. I have to say, since using this knife, my confidence has increased tenfold. The Mora Companion was the starting point for me, but I didn't have the confidence to do heavy stuff with it. What do I mean by heavy stuff? We'll come on to that. This other knife I bought, boy was that beefy, but it just didn't hold an edge. This for me satisfies so many things, and I'll come on to what those things are. But that's just a little bit of the background that led me from starting out in bushcraft and not having a knife to ending up with the Mora Garberg. This knife has had, in my opinion, for my skill set and my ability to get outdoors, it's had a really good innings over the past 13 or 14 months. It accompanies me on every outing that I go on, and I'm out quite frequently. I've got a list here of things that I've done with this. I've carved with this, quite delicate carving, absolutely fine. I've skinned a couple of rabbits with this, no problem at all with doing that delicate work. I've done countless feather sticks with this. I've initiated fire with this, both using the pommel on the handle of the knife, the back of the main spine, and also the spine tip end of the knife as well for those fine, delicate controlled sparks from a ferro rod. It's performed faultlessly. I've batoned with this knife, and I have to say I've even batoned through hornbeam, Carpinus betulus I believe, which is a tough old wood. Didn't let me down at all. That was the only occasion, I have to say, where when I've been out in the field working with it, I've needed to sharpen it at the end of the day. On all the other occasions, I just needed to strop it. It was tip top again. On that occasion, when I was batoning bloody tough wood, that was the only time I've actually needed to remove some material to bring it back to an edge, which is no mean feat, to be honest, because it's a big old, it can be a tough old beast, can hornbeam. So the knife has stood up well to edge retention, which brings me on very nicely to the pros and cons, in my opinion, of this knife. If anybody's been honest with a product review, they will tell you that there's some good things about it, and if they've truly used it and they've truly considered its use, they've probably discovered some things along the way that either could be better with the design or that just don't quite work well for them. Maybe it's got nothing to do with the design, maybe it's just their use of it, and I'm no exception. I've got a list of pros and cons. Really easy to sharpen, very, very easy to sharpen. I've been on camera many times saying that I'm a novice in the whole sharpening field. I'm improving. My skill set is improving, my speed is improving, but my ability to get a good edge is improving with that speed. So overall, I think I'm getting better at sharpening. This, of all the knives that I've owned, this gets to a keen edge quicker and keeps that keen edge better than any of the other knives that I've mentioned. I should also mention that I also used to use a Mora Companion HD as well. So of the three different knives, Companion HD and the unnamed knife, without a doubt the easiest to sharpen. Really, really simple to sharpen for a newcomer like me. The flip side of that, it holds its edge really well. I'm just giving you a few examples where I've been out doing different types of work, and on only one occasion have I needed to actually sharpen the edge again. The rest have just been stropping it back into condition. So very, very, very good edge retention. If you couple a good edge retention with ease of sharpening, I think you're onto a winner. It's got a full tang. The full tang means, for those of you that are watching this that are maybe just getting into this, if you see the metal of the knife that my finger is running along, that actually runs into and all the way through to the end of the knife. It's one solid piece of steel from one end to the other. Different types of knives will be, the metal will kind of end partially, 2/3, a half, a quarter of the way into this handle. This is one continuous piece of steel with the handle wrapped around it, a full tang knife. Doesn't look any different, probably weighs a little bit more. What it's given me though is a confidence in using the knife that when I was using the other Moras previously, I just didn't have, especially with the Mora, my first Mora. I knew that was a partial tang knife, didn't have the confidence to do some of the beefier stuff like batoning. I still did it and it never broke, I can't pretend that it did, but I was always kind of holding back with what I could do with it because I was mindful that it could. Full tang knife here, much more confident in my use. And of course, if you're confident in using a tool that is designed to cut things, an increase in confidence in using that tool is only a good thing in my opinion. Confidence in using a bloody sharp tool equals a good thing. The other pros I've discovered with this, unlike the Mora that I used to previously own, the Mora Companion, and unlike the other knife, the unnamed knife, the knife that shall not be named, almost the full length of this spine has a 90-degree angle on it. Firstly, the Mora Companion didn't, you had to put your own on. The other knife I used to own, there was only a divot in here, probably about finger thickness, that was sharpened. So you always had to strike your ferro rod on that part of the knife. With this knife, the full spine is sharpened, allowing me to drag a spark at any point along there and still be able to pull material off the ferro rod and ignite a spark. It's a good thing again, in my opinion. You could also use just there. My thumb is framing it, I hope. You could also use the pommel, which is the other end of the tip of the steel, if you like, that is protruding from the end of the handle there. I've got a couple of videos, and I'll link to them at the end of this video, where I'm striking sparks from the end of that knife there. It's a good to have, but I'll be perfectly honest, I can't think of a situation, unless I'd sheared my knife off at the handle, where I would use that as opposed to the spine of the blade. Just from an ergonomic perspective, as holding a knife like you're used to holding a knife. I guess the only advantage is you could potentially leave it in its sheath and strike whilst the blade is still to a degree. You could probably get away with striking whilst the blade is in the sheath. But again, it just feels a lot more awkward. If you ever needed to shatter glass or to pound something, I'm imagining that could be useful. I think I've used it once or twice in all the time I've had the knife. That's not a knock, it's just I haven't particularly used that feature. There's not a lot I can say about it other than it's there. So those are the pros of the knife. I've gone through those quite quickly, but if you stop and rewind this video and just listen to each of them again, none of them are small things. Easy to sharpen, keeps its edge, increase in confidence, full tang equals increase in confidence, in my opinion. They're really important things. They're incredibly important things. They're almost foundation level things, in my opinion, before you start to build upon the type of steel, the type of handle, or the sheath, or any other fancy bits that come with it. You have a knife for cutting things. Therefore, it needs to be sharp, it needs to be easy to sharpen, it needs to stay sharp, you need to be confident in using it. They're the hygiene factors, in my opinion, of a good knife, and this has it in buckets. So those are the key plus points for me. It's hard sometimes to describe your experience of using something just using words and images, because it's an experience that you've had, clearly, and I find it difficult to convey that sometimes through the camera, but I hope you've gathered that it has been and is continuing to be a very overall positive experience with using the Mora Garberg Carbon. But there's always a but, right? There are a few things that haven't gone as well, or that I was surprised at. Like I said at the beginning of the video, doesn't mean that the design faults. I'm not blaming the knife necessarily on all of them, or Mora. I am no doubt part of the factor with some of them, but there were a few things that I sort of wanted to go through. When I first got this, I did what everyone does. I took it out, grabbed a piece of A4 paper, ran the knife across it, and the knife, and I'm going to exaggerate this now, but the knife just jutted along the surface. I was gobsmacked. It felt sharp, it felt really sharp. So I just tried a different part of the paper, ran the knife across it, and it just jutted along the surface. I was gobsmacked. I looked at the spine of I looked at the blade of the knife, looked at the edge. There were no flat spots. I genuinely couldn't figure out what it was. I tried changing the angle as I was driving it into the paper. It had a little bit more success, but not a great deal. So I did a little bit of Googling round, and I believe it was Joe Price from the Living to Learn Facebook channel. Hi Joe, if you're watching, who put me onto the fact that this knife comes by default, on purpose, with a micro bevel. Now, I'm not going to pretend I fully understand what a micro bevel is, not enough to explain it on camera. I believe it's part of the machining process. I think, this is what I've read, not what Joe said. It's part of the machining process that gives it a micro bevel. Why do they do it? I don't know. What does it mean? I don't really know. What I do know is that what I had to do is I had to sharpen this knife. Maybe I didn't, maybe I should have only I think I stropped it. Didn't make any difference. In the end, I had to sharpen the knife only to a small degree, not for long, to remove that micro bevel from both sides of the bevel, and it was absolutely fine, and it's been fine ever since. And when I went and researched this after I'd had that experience, I saw lots of people talking about remove the micro. As soon as you get it, remove the micro bevel. I clearly hadn't read that far into the research when I bought it and discovered you have to remove the micro bevel, or I chose to remove the micro bevel. You don't have to, of course. And that brought it back to the edge that I would have expected out of the box, and the edge that has done me proud ever since. So the micro bevel thing, it's by design, it's not a bug, it's not a fault, it's just odd why it happens, but it's not insurmountable by any stretch of the imagination. The other thing that kind of tallies with the area we've been looking at is it comes with a finish. You'll be noticed there that this section here and this section here is black. It has some form of protective finish on there. And I do kind of see the sense in that. Don't you want to give your knife as much chance and as much opportunity as you can to not rust or to not corrode? But the fact that protective finish used to be all the way along the actual edge of the knife as well just struck me as very, very odd, because the moment you sharpen it and probably strop it to any degree, you're just removing that finish. So again, it's possibly down to the machining process. It may be easier to dip the whole thing or spray the whole thing in the protective finish than only partially protect finish. So maybe it's part of the machining process. Didn't affect the sharpness of the blade, didn't affect its use at all. It's just an observation of mine that it seems strange that you would finish the whole thing. But if it's from a machining perspective, I can kind of understand why they possibly do that then. Have to say, it hasn't affected it at all. I guess the other thing, two things I want to mention is, firstly, let's stay with what I think is a fault, and then we'll move on to possibly a fault with me. There's the Mora Garberg knife. I've shown this many times now. Let's just put that to one side, because that's not all you get. You also get a sheath. You actually get an option of 2 sheaths, and I went for the leather sheath. Sheath, there it is. If I turn it round, you'll notice, and I've got a couple of cable ties on there, and the reason I've got a couple of cable ties on there is the rivets actually popped. Didn't rip the leather, the actual rivets failed that hold the knife sheath to the belt loop. So you can imagine now, if that was on my belt and those cable ties weren't there and I was moving around and there was the weight of the knife in it, this section here is just going to pop up and I'm potentially losing my sheath and my knife. I was really surprised at that. I don't go throwing myself around in the woods. That sounds weird, but you know what I mean. I don't do a lot of climbing. I don't do any climbing with this. I'm not getting in and out of canoes. I'm not dragging things and you know, carrying things on my waist. I was really surprised. I could not think of why it would choose to fail. Well, I could not think why it would fail, because it hadn't had any more pressure put on it at any angle than what I would consider to be normal usage. So I mentioned this in a couple of Facebook groups. Got some interesting responses. One of the more positive responses was, I believe it was Dave Canterbury and Joe Price again. Thanks fellas, who put me on to, I think it was Thomas from Mora Knife, and within a couple of weeks, it was over the Christmas period, so things take longer, but over a couple of weeks, their UK distributor had been in touch with me and very kindly sent me a brand spanking new, same variant of sheath there. I'm keeping it in this for now, just to be able to show you on this video the way that it's cable tied together. But I do have for now, a fully functioning new sheath there. So it failed. In my opinion, it shouldn't have failed. To their absolute credit and beyond, they came up with the goods and sent me a brand new sheath. A company that steps up to the marks and says, just let us take care of it, for my mind is you're buying into that, as well as buying the knife from them. You're buying into all of that aftercare support. So no qualms at all with Mora. Fantastic service with them. Thank you. If any of you guys are watching this, a massive thank you for doing that for me. So I've told you why I got the knife. I've told you the things I like about it. I've told you most of the things I don't like about it. The one last thing to talk about is the handle itself. Now, I know that there are some people who swear by wooden handles. They will swear by micarta handles or the plasticky rubber type handles that this has got. I'll be honest, I don't know enough about knives or knife handles, or probably use them enough to be really that concerned about the material of the knife handle. To me, it's the blade that's important, but I do caveat that by saying I don't know enough about knives and I don't use them regularly enough for it to be a big deal. But at my level, I'm not that bothered. But there's something I've noticed with this one. When I'm holding this for a protracted period of time doing work, I get a real hot spot, this point here, at the base of my little finger on my right hand here. It really, it calluses, it blisters, it gets incredible hot spot forms there. I doubt it's anything to do with the handle. I reckon it's more to do with my office keyboard warrior hands that I have nowadays. Now I'm no longer climbing, that they're just not used to pressure being placed in that point. If I use this more often, I've no doubt the hands would become conditioned to that. Why am I saying this? Well, because if you've got a knife, not necessarily this one, any knife, and if it's not quite working well for your hand build or for you, if it's not a structural problem with the knife, maybe it's just conditioning. Maybe you just need to use it more to either build up muscle memory, build up the muscles around the area where it's troublesome, just develop some harder skin on my waif-like, ladylike hands. Just need to perhaps use the tool more to work through that than blaming it on the handle of the knife, which I am absolutely not doing. It's just an observation. From a usage perspective, from a physical usage perspective, that's the only thing that I've had a problem with. I'm big enough and ugly enough to know though that it's not the knife's problem, it's my dainty little pinky problem there. So we've looked at why I bought it, the good things, the things I've enjoyed about it, the things that have I won't say let it down, that would be far too great a statement, but the things that have been less than positive, the developmental things, I guess, the developmental side of it. Overall verdicts then, this is a great knife, this is a good knife. This is a knife that, with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit of a bit more money at the time, I wish I'd bought this knife at the beginning of my bushcrafting journey. It didn't exist at the beginning of it, so that's a big ask. But for me, it is a really, really good entry knife. The Mora knife Companion and Companion HDs, they're great entry knives, because I used one for years and people that I know and respect in the bushcraft industry use these and give these to students on their courses. It's a good knife. But for me, if you're committed to doing this, if you've got the money to do this, or if you've got the money to go up a level to this sort of knife, you can almost leapfrog that experience of using the Mora and go straight to this. It is a really good entry-level knife. If you've got an entry-level knife and you're looking to upgrade, like I said at the outset of this video, that's a brilliant knife to look at. If you've developed your knife safety skills, if you've started to develop the confidence, if you've got your knife sharpening off to a T and you've ruined maybe a few cheaper blades along the way, that's a really good knife to take what you've learned and the confidence and the sharpening skills, get a knife that's perhaps a little bit beefier, a little bit more, something you're more confident with, and run with that. That won't let you down. And like I said again at the beginning of the video, for me, I used to own a knife, the knife with no name, that was much more expensive than that. But it didn't have some of the features, such as the ability to easily sharpen it or keep an edge that does. So for me, this balances a lower price tag. I'm not going to pretend it's the lowest price tag by any stretch. A lower price tag, but it comes with something that I haven't received from a higher end product. So there's a nice mixture of economy versus feature and form there, which is sometimes a very difficult balance to juggle, isn't it? My review is over. That's what I think about the Mora Garberg Carbon. If you haven't yet deduced, I'm really happy with the knife. I'm not going anywhere at the moment and can't see it for the foreseeable future away from this knife. And when people talk to me about an entry-level knife for bushcraft, what could they use? I give them the usual Mora Companion, but I also say if you could afford it and if you're confident enough, that isn't a bad quick step-up option either. I am very, very, very happy with the knife. It gets 2 thumbs up from Craig. What about you? Are you using the Mora Garberg? What's your thoughts and opinions on it? Do you agree with my observations? Do you disagree with them? Do you agree with some of them but not others? Have you formed opinions about some aspects of it that I just haven't mentioned? Let me know in the comments below. If you've not used a Mora Garberg, what are you using? Are you looking to step up at the moment? Are you quite happy with what you've got? If you are looking to step up, why? What is it that's made you move on or think about moving on from what you're using? If you're happy with what you've got, why? I'm not challenging you, I'm just asking, what is it about your current knife and setup that you're happy to say, you know what? This is doing me just fine for just now. I don't need to look elsewhere. I don't need to be distracted elsewhere. I don't need anything else to spend my money on. Thanks, Craig. Let me know. Thoughts, ideas, opinions, suggestions about your use of the Mora Garberg, and if you're not using it, what are you using? Why are you happy with it? Why might you be considering moving on? A massive thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Somewhere a little bit different for me today. I must say, don't think I'm going to come back here again. There's a lot of people walking past in the background, and there's an element, it just feels a little uneasy being on camera in front of complete strangers. I am recording with a new microphone that's sat on top of the camera at the moment, so do let me know what you think about it. It's a little bit breezy today, there's a little bit of background noise. Let me know what you thought about the audio quality of the video. Was it better? Was it worse? Are you like me, and did you not notice a blind piece of difference between this and previous videos? I'm waffling on. Let me bring this to an end. Thank you ever so much for watching the video. If you're a subscriber, I've said it before and I'll say it again, a massive thank you. If you're not a subscriber, there's a big visual prompt at the bottom of the screen now prompting you what to do to rectify that situation. Do share this video. There's a lot of people out there, when you talk about bushcraft, knives spring to mind. Knives, knives, knives. Whether that's right or wrong, that's the reality. A lot of people out there interested in knives. If you could share this video, that will massively help this video to spread and to become popular. That does me a favour, but hopefully it will do people that are looking at bushcraft knives a favour as well. It will be another opinion to take into account. Thank you as always for watching. I'll see you again real soon. Have a great week. Cheers.